"Mom, you're too old to travel with us. Just watch the house, okay?" That's what my daughter said to me. Those exact words. Not with cruelty in her voice, but with something far worse, indifference. Like I was a task on her to-do list, something to check off before she could move on to more important things. Like my feelings were background noise she'd learned to tune out years ago. That's how my daughter spoke to me the night before their trip, as if 65 years of love, care, and sacrifice had evaporated into nothing. As if every sleepless night I'd spent rocking her when she was sick, every dream I'd buried so she could chase hers, every single moment I'd put her first had simply vanished from her memory. Gone. Erased. Meaningless. My name is Caroline Winters. I'm 65 years old, and I've lived my entire life taking care of people who forgot I had dreams of my own. I'm not rich. I'm not fancy. I don't have designer clothes or a retirement fund that makes financial advisors smile. I'm just a mother who raised her daughter with everything she had, every ounce of strength, every penny I could scrape together, every piece of my heart, and somehow, somewhere along the way, I ended up being treated like a burden. Like an inconvenience. Like something to be managed and tucked away when more exciting things came along. And the pain of that realization? It's the kind that doesn't announce itself with dramatic tears or screaming matches. It's quiet. It seeps into your bones slowly, day after day, until one morning you wake up and realize you've become invisible in your own life. Let me take you back to how this all started, how I ended up here, in this guest room that feels more like a storage closet for a life I used to have. After my husband Robert passed away 3 years ago, my daughter Claire said to me, "Mom, why live alone? Move in with us. We have plenty of space. The kids would love having their grandmother around. We're family, we should be together." It sounded like love at first. It really did. I remember how my heart lifted when she said those words, how desperately I wanted to believe that I wouldn't have to face the crushing loneliness of that empty house where Robert's ghost lingered in every corner. The house where his coffee mug still sat in the cabinet, where his reading glasses were still on the nightstand, where I could still smell his cologne in our closet even months after he was gone. So I said yes. God help me, I said yes. I sold my house, the house where Robert and I had built our life together, where we'd brought Claire home as a newborn, where we'd celebrated every birthday and holiday and ordinary Tuesday evening. I packed up 37 years of memories into cardboard boxes, donated half of what I owned, and moved into their guest room. Their spare room. The room they used to store Christmas decorations and old exercise equipment they'd stopped using. At first, it felt right. It felt like family. There were dinners together around their beautiful dining table, laughter echoing through the hallways, the sound of my grandchildren's feet running through the house. I helped with the kids, picked them up from school, helped with homework, made their lunches with little notes tucked inside like I used to do for Claire. I cooked meals, real meals, not just reheated takeout. I mended clothes when they tore. I stayed up for emergencies, the stomach bugs, the nightmares, the teenage heartbreaks that needed a listening ear at 2 in the morning. I told myself, this is what family is for. This is what love looks like. This is my purpose now. But over time, things changed. So slowly that I didn't notice it happening until it had already happened. Like how you don't notice the seasons changing until one day you realize the leaves have all fallen and winter has arrived without warning. The room they gave me started feeling smaller. Not physically, it was the same 12 by 14 feet it had always been, but emotionally. It began to feel less like a space I lived in and more like a space I was confined to. A place to retreat when I wasn't needed, which became more and more often. My voice mattered less at the dinner table. I'd start to tell a story, maybe something from my day, or a memory from when Claire was young, and I'd watch their eyes glaze over. I'd see Claire glance at her phone. I'd notice her husband, Derek, checking the time. And I'd just trail off, stop talking mid-sentence. And no one would notice. No one would ask me to finish. They'd just move on to something else, something more interesting, something that didn't involve the old woman at the end of the table. And when they planned their first family vacation without me, I realized I wasn't part of their story anymore. I was just in the background. Set decoration. The grandmother-shaped object they kept in the spare room to occasionally help with childcare and household chores. I remember exactly when they told me about that first trip. We were having dinner, chicken parmesan, I'd made it from scratch, and Claire said, so casually, like she was commenting on the weather, "Oh, Mom, by the way, we're taking the kids to Disney World next month. Just for a week. You'll be okay here, right? It'll give you some time to yourself." Time to myself. As if I was drowning in social obligations and needed a break. As if I wasn't already spending most of my days alone in that room, reading library books and watching television shows I didn't care about just to fill the silence. I said, "Oh. That sounds wonderful. The kids will love it." And I meant it. I did want them to have a good time. But inside, something cracked. Something small but fundamental, like the first tiny fracture in a windshield that you know will eventually spiderweb into complete destruction. They didn't ask if I wanted to go. They didn't even consider it. They just decided I wasn't part of the equation. And that's how it continued. Trip after trip, vacation after vacation, family outing after family outing. Sometimes they'd tell me in advance, "We're going to the mountains this weekend, Mom. There's food in the fridge." Sometimes I'd just wake up on a Saturday morning to find them packing the car, and Claire would pop her head into my room with a bright smile and say, "We're going to the beach for the day. See you tonight." I became a house sitter. The plant waterer. The person who made sure the mail was collected and the cat was fed. Not the grandmother. Not the mother. Just the convenient live-in help who didn't even require a paycheck. But this time was different. This time it wasn't just a weekend trip or a week at Disney World. This time it was their dream vacation, 3 weeks in Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, London. The kind of trip Robert and I used to talk about taking when we retired, before cancer stole that dream away from us. And they told me about it the same way they always did. Casually. As an afterthought. We were in the kitchen, I was making dinner again, pot roast with vegetables, their favorite, and Claire was scrolling through her phone while I worked. She didn't even look up when she said it. "Mom, we finally booked it. 3 weeks in Europe. We've been saving for years. The kids are finally old enough to really appreciate it. We leave next Tuesday." I remember my hand still going over the cutting board. I remember the weight of the knife in my palm. I remember turning to look at her, this woman I'd given birth to, this person I'd sacrificed everything for, and seeing nothing. No awareness of what she'd just done. No recognition that those words might hurt me. I said, my voice carefully neutral, "That's wonderful, honey. You deserve it." And she smiled, still looking at her phone, and said, "Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. You'll be fine here, right? You know where everything is. The cat's been having some digestive issues, so make sure you give her the special food. And the plants need watering every other day, not every day, Derek's very particular about that. Oh, and could you maybe not use the living room while we're gone? We just had it deep cleaned and I want it to stay nice." Not use the living room. In the house where I lived. The house where I paid no rent, true, but where I also provided free childcare, free housekeeping, free cooking, free everything. And now I couldn't even sit on the couch while they were gone. I said, "Of course." What else could I say? Where else could I go? I'd sold my house. I'd given up my independence. I'd made myself completely dependent on their charity, and now I was trapped. That night, the night before they left, is when it really fell apart. When the last thread of my dignity finally snapped. They were in the living room I apparently wasn't allowed to use, doing final preparations. Suitcases everywhere, passports and tickets spread out on the coffee table, the kids running around excited and wild. And I was in the kitchen, where I always was, cleaning up after dinner. Alone. Again. Claire came in to get water, and I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the thought of 3 weeks alone in this house that wasn't mine. Maybe it was the accumulated weight of 3 years of being invisible. Maybe I just couldn't swallow my hurt anymore. I said, trying to keep my voice light, I've never been to Europe. Your father and I always wanted to go. She was filling her water bottle, not really listening. We used to talk about it all the time. Paris especially. He wanted to see the Louvre. I wanted to walk along the Seine. That's nice, Mom. Still not looking at me. Scrolling through her phone with one hand while water overflowed from her bottle. Something in me broke. Just completely shattered. I said, and I couldn't keep the tremor out of my voice anymore, Claire. I'm only 65. I'm not dead. I'm not decrepit. I could still travel. I could still see the world. I could still. She turned to me then, and the look on her face. God, I'll never forget it. Not anger. Not guilt. Just inconvenience. Mild irritation that I was making things difficult. Mom, she said, in that tone you use with a child who's asking for something unreasonable, you're too old to travel with us. The flights are long. You'd be exhausted. You'd slow us down. We have an itinerary planned. We want to actually enjoy our vacation, not worry about whether you can keep up. Too old. Too slow. Too much trouble. That's what I'd become to her. I felt something in my chest turn to ice. I felt every warm feeling I'd ever had for her crystallize into something hard and cold and bitter. I said, my voice completely flat now, I see. She didn't notice. She just smiled that bright, empty smile and said, I knew you'd understand. You're the best, Mom. Just watch the house, okay? We'll bring you back a souvenir. A souvenir. Like a child. Like someone who wasn't capable of experiencing the world herself and needed to be given a token, a trinket, a little reminder that other people were out there living while she sat at home and existed. After she left the kitchen, I stood there for a long time. Just stood there with my hands in the soapy water, staring at nothing, feeling nothing except a vast, aching emptiness where my heart used to be. That's how my daughter spoke to me the night before their trip. Not with cruelty. Cruelty would have required her to actually think about me, to consider my feelings enough to want to hurt them. No, she spoke to me with carelessness. With thoughtlessness. With the casual dismissiveness you'd show to someone who simply doesn't matter. And that's when I knew. That's when I finally understood. I wasn't her mother anymore. Not really. I was just the woman who lived in the guest room and did what she was told. But the next morning, the next morning. That's when the universe decided to show me something. Or maybe it wasn't the universe, maybe it was just dumb luck, or maybe it was fate, or maybe it was God finally deciding I'd suffered enough and throwing me a lifeline. The next morning, I found their tickets in my mailbox. I'd gone out early to get the newspaper. Yes, I still read the physical newspaper, one of my few remaining connections to the world outside this house, and there it was. A large manila envelope, addressed to Claire and Derek, sitting right there in the mailbox even though they'd left for the airport 2 hours earlier. I stood there in my bathrobe and slippers, the morning dew soaking through the fabric, just staring at that envelope. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were their tickets. All of them. Electronic confirmation codes printed out on official airline paper, with all their names printed neatly across the top. Claire. Derek. My 2 grandchildren, Emma and Jack. And mine nowhere in sight. Obviously. Because I was too old. Too slow. Too much of a burden. They'd left these at home by accident. In their rush to get to the airport, to start their dream vacation, their escape from the boring reality of their lives that included me, they'd forgotten the most important thing. I stood there in the driveway, holding those tickets, and I laughed. I actually laughed. A harsh, bitter sound that scared a bird out of the tree above me. They would get to the airport and realize they didn't have their tickets. They would panic. They would call home, but I'd left my phone inside, and anyway, it was too early for me to have heard it. They would scramble and stress and argue, and maybe, just maybe, they would miss their flight. Their dream vacation would dissolve before it even started, melting away like snow in the sun. And it would be an accident. A simple mistake. Nothing to do with me. I walked back inside, very slowly, very carefully, like I was carrying something precious and fragile. I sat down at the kitchen table with my tea, Earl Grey, the kind Robert used to drink with me every morning, and I just stared at those tickets. I stared at them until the steam from my tea faded into nothing. All the years came back. Every single one of them. The moment I first held Claire in my arms, this tiny, perfect creature that I'd grown inside my body, that I'd brought into the world through pain and blood and effort. The nights I stayed awake when she had fevers, pressing cool washcloths to her forehead and singing soft lullies until dawn. The scraped knees I bandaged with cartoon band-aids and kisses. The school plays where she forgot her lines and I mouthed them from the audience. The teenage years when she hated me, when every conversation was a battle, but I kept showing up anyway because that's what mothers do. The sacrifices I never mentioned. The promotion I turned down because it would have meant traveling and I didn't want to miss her high school graduation. The community college classes I dropped when Robert got sick because someone needed to be there for the medical appointments, the treatments, the slow, agonizing decline. The dreams I buried so deep I almost forgot I'd ever had them. And now, here I am. A 65-year-old babysitter for a house I didn't even own. A convenient piece of furniture they could use when needed and ignore when they didn't. I sat there for a long time. Maybe an hour. Maybe 2. Time felt strange and elastic, like it didn't matter anymore. And then I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been bent and twisted for so long it had almost broken, but instead it was straightening. Hardening. Becoming steel. I picked up my phone. I called the airline. The woman who answered was young, I could tell from her voice. Cheerful. Probably in her 20s, probably had no idea what it felt like to give everything you had to someone and have them treat you like garbage in return. She said, in that bright, professional tone, "Thank you for calling. How can I help you today?" I said, very calmly, very clearly, "Yes, I'd like to cancel these tickets." There was a pause. The clicking of computer keys. Then she said, "Certainly, ma'am. Can I have the confirmation number?" I read it to her. All 16 digits and letters. My hands weren't shaking anymore. More clicking. Then her voice again, slightly confused. "I see this is for 4 passengers. Are you canceling all of them?" "Yes." "May I ask the reason for the cancellation?" I smiled for the first time that day. A real smile. It felt strange on my face, like I'd forgotten how to do it. I said, "Because they forgot I still know how to fly." She didn't understand, of course. She just said, "Okay, ma'am. I'm processing the cancellation now. Please note that the cancellation fees will be." "I don't care about the fees." The refund will be processed to the original payment method within 7 to 10 business days, minus the cancellation penalties. That's fine. Is there anything else I can help you with today? And that's when I surprised myself. That's when I did something I hadn't planned, hadn't even considered until the words were coming out of my mouth. I said, actually, yes. I'd like to book a ticket. Certainly. Where are you traveling to? Athens. I don't know why I said Athens. Robert and I had never talked about going to Greece. We'd focused on Paris, on London, on Rome. But Athens came out of my mouth like it had been waiting there all along, like some part of me knew that's where I needed to go. Wonderful. When would you like to depart? Today. As soon as possible. There was a longer pause this time. Ma'am, international flights typically require booking in advance. Let me see what's available. Okay, I have a flight leaving this evening at 7:45 p.m. with one connection in Frankfurt. Would that work? 7:45. The same time Claire and Derek's flight was supposed to leave from the same airport. They'd be there, dealing with the chaos of their cancelled tickets, scrambling to figure out what went wrong, blaming each other probably. And I'd be there too, walking past them to board my own plane. That's perfect, I said. After I hung up, I didn't cry. Part of me thought I should cry. This was a big moment, a dramatic break from everything I'd known for the past 3 years. But I just sat there and made more tea, the kind you drink when your hands are trembling but your heart is steady. The kind you drink when you're about to do something that scares you and exhilarates you in equal measure. Then I went online and confirmed everything. 1 seat. Aisle. Athens. Departure 7:45 p.m. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? Who would I tell? Claire and Derek were on their way to the airport to discover their cancelled vacation. My few remaining friends from my old life had drifted away after I moved in with Claire. She'd never encouraged me to maintain those relationships, and I'd been too tired, too beaten down, to fight for them. I had no one. Which meant I was free. Completely, terrifyingly free. I went to my room, not my room, their guest room, and I started packing. 1 suitcase. 1 scarf, blue silk, that Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary. 1 promise to myself, I won't stay behind anymore. I moved through the house gathering what I needed, and with each item I packed, I felt lighter. Not physically, the suitcase was getting heavier, but emotionally. Spiritually. Every piece of clothing, every toiletry, every practical necessity was like shedding weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. I won't stay behind anymore. That's what I kept repeating to myself as I packed. As I checked my passport, thankfully still valid, though I hadn't used it since Robert and I went to Canada 12 years ago. As I counted out cash from the small savings account I'd kept hidden, the one Claire didn't know about, the one I'd been slowly feeding with the little bits of money I managed to scrape together from the tiny pension Robert left me. I won't stay behind anymore. Claire wasn't always like this, you know. She wasn't always so cold, so dismissive. There was a time when we were close. When we were everything to each other. When she was little, we used to travel together. Just the two of us sometimes, when Robert was busy with work. Road trips, lakeside picnics, cheap motels with stained bedspreads and flickering TV sets. We'd pack sandwiches and snacks and drive for hours with the windows down, singing along to bad radio, making up stories about the people in the cars we passed. I remember one summer when she was 8. We drove to the coast, just because we could. We couldn't afford a fancy hotel, so we stayed in this rundown place where the air conditioning barely worked and you could hear the highway through the walls. But Claire didn't care. She thought it was an adventure. We spent the days on the beach, building sandcastles and hunting for shells, and the evenings eating gas station sandwiches and watching terrible movies on the fuzzy motel TV. On the last night, we laid on the beach after dark, probably not the safest thing to do, but I was younger then, braver, less aware of all the things that could go wrong. We looked up at the stars, and Claire said, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to travel everywhere with you. We'll go to every country and eat all the food and see all the things. Just you and me." I said, "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." She fell asleep in my arms that night, sandy and sticky and sun-tired, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. Somewhere between that little girl and this 42-year-old woman who tells me I'm too old to travel, something changed. Somewhere between growing up and growing cold, she forgot those days. She forgot that we used to be a team. She forgot that I used to be fun, that I used to be someone worth being with, that I was more than just a responsibility she'd inherited. And maybe I did too. Maybe I forgot as well. Maybe I let myself become just Mom, the woman who cooked and cleaned and babysat and asked for nothing in return. Maybe I taught her to treat me this way by accepting it for so long. Maybe we both forgot that I used to be more than just Mom. I used to be Caroline. Caroline Winters. A woman who dreamed and laughed and wanted things. A woman who existed outside of her relationships to other people. A woman who had value just because she was herself, not because of what she could do for others. Canceling their trip wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't trying to hurt them, wasn't trying to punish them, wasn't trying to make them suffer. It was closed. For once, I wanted her to stop, to actually stop her busy, important, exciting life, and feel the absence she'd created in my life. I wanted her to experience what it felt like when someone you love just decides you don't matter enough to include. I wanted her to understand, just for a moment, what it's like to be left behind. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to feel alive enough to miss something too. Because here's the truth I'd been avoiding for 3 years, I hadn't missed anything. When they went on their vacations without me, I didn't miss them. I just felt relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to try so hard to be cheerful and helpful and grateful. Relieved that I could let my mask drop for a few days and just be sad without anyone telling me to cheer up or look on the bright side or be grateful for what I had. I'd stopped missing things. I'd stopped wanting things. I'd stopped feeling much of anything except tired. And that scared me more than anything else. Because what's the point of being alive if you're just existing? What's the point of breathing if you're not living? So yes, I canceled their tickets. And yes, I booked my own. And yes, I packed my suitcase and got ready to walk out of that house and not look back. 3 days later, while they argued with the airline and wondered who had canceled their dream vacation, because of course they had no idea it was me, no concept that I was capable of doing something like that, I was already on a plane. My first in 30 years. 30 years. 3 decades since I'd felt the rumble of engines beneath me, felt the strange pressure in my ears as we climbed, looked out the window to see the world shrinking below. Robert was still alive then. We were going to visit his sister in Seattle. Claire had stayed home with her boyfriend, the one before Derek, the one who broke her heart and made her cry on my shoulder for weeks. She needed me then. She knew she needed me. Now, on this plane to Athens, I pressed my face against the window like a child and watched the clouds. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and pink and purple, colors so beautiful they hurt to look at. And I thought about how many sunsets I'd missed while I was inside their house, cooking dinner, folding laundry, doing all the invisible work that no one noticed until it wasn't done. I wasn't running away. I want to be clear about that too. I wasn't fleeing or escaping or hiding. I was finally walking toward myself. Toward the version of Caroline Winters who'd gotten buried somewhere along the way. The version who used to dream. Who used to want things. Who used to believe she deserved to take up space in the world. The flight attendant came by with drinks, and I ordered wine. Red wine. I never drink red wine, Claire always said it gave her headaches, so I stopped buying it years ago. But here, at 35,000 feet, flying toward a country I'd never thought I'd see, I ordered red wine and drank it slowly, savoring every sip like it was the most luxurious thing I'd ever tasted. It was. The woman next to me, younger, maybe in her 30s, with a kind face, noticed me staring out the window with what must have been a ridiculous expression of wonder. She smiled and said, "First time flying?" I could have lied. Could have said no, I'd done this 100 times, I'm a seasoned traveler. But something about being up here, suspended between the life I'd left and the unknown ahead, made me want to be honest. I said, "First time in 30 years. Her eyes widened. Wow. That's, wow. Where are you headed? Athens. Alone? Yes. And saying that word, alone, without sadness or apology, felt like a revelation. Yes, I'm traveling alone. She grinned. That's amazing. Good for you. I'm Sarah, by the way. Caroline. We talked for hours. Or maybe she talked and I listened, so hungry for conversation that wasn't about meal planning or household management. She told me about her job in marketing, her recent divorce, and her decision to take a solo trip to find herself. She was so earnest about it, so serious about this quest for self-discovery, and I wanted to tell her, "You're 34, you have decades to find yourself. I'm 65 and I'm just starting." But I didn't. I just listened and nodded and felt grateful that someone was talking to me like I was a person, not just a fixture. When she asked why I was going to Athens, I found myself telling her the truth. Most of it, anyway. About Claire, about being left behind, about canceling their tickets and booking my own. I thought she might judge me. Thought she might say I was being petty or cruel. But instead, she laughed, a real, full-throated laugh that made other passengers look over. "That's the most badass thing I've ever heard," she said. "Seriously. You're my hero. My hero." When was the last time someone had said anything like that to me? When was the last time someone had looked at me with admiration instead of pity or obligation? I felt tears prick my eyes, and I turned back to the window so she wouldn't see. They said I was too old to travel. My own daughter looked at me and saw someone used up, worn out, past their expiration date. Someone who'd be a burden, who'd slow them down, who wasn't worth including in their adventure. But the truth is, I was just too quiet for too long. Too quiet about my pain. Too quiet about my dreams. Too quiet about the ways I was disappearing inside that house, inside that role of convenient grandmother who asked for nothing and gave everything. I'd spent 3 years being quiet. Being good. Being grateful for the scraps of attention they threw my way. Telling myself I should be thankful they'd taken me in at all, that I had a roof over my head, that I got to see my grandchildren even if I wasn't really part of their lives. 3 years of silence. Of swallowing hurt. Of pretending I didn't notice when they talked about their plans and I wasn't included. Of smiling when they came home from trips and showed me pictures of all the things I'd missed. And that morning, when I canceled their tickets while standing in that driveway in my bathrobe, I also canceled the version of me that waited for permission. Permission to want things. Permission to take up space. Permission to matter. I was done waiting. Done being quiet. Done being invisible. The plane landed in Frankfurt for the connection, and I had 4 hours to kill in the airport. I wandered through the terminal like a ghost, looking at all the shops and restaurants and people hurrying to their gates. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had a purpose. And so did I, for the first time in years. I bought postcards in a gift shop. Glossy, touristy postcards with pictures of Greek islands and ancient ruins. I sat in a cafe with overpriced coffee and wrote on the back of one, "Claire. By the time you read this, I'll be in Athens." I'm sorry about your tickets. Actually, no. I'm not sorry. I'm tired of apologizing for taking up space in a life that used to be mine. I hope you have a wonderful time at home. Feed the cat. Water the plants. Mom. I didn't mail it. I stuck it in my purse, knowing I probably never would mail it but needing to write the words anyway. I need to say them, even if only to myself. The second flight was shorter but felt longer. I was exhausted, running on adrenaline and wine and the terrifying excitement of what I was doing. I dozed off somewhere over the Mediterranean and dreamed of Claire as a little girl, building sandcastles, laughing in the sun. When I woke up, we were descending into Athens. The city spread out below me, white buildings glowing in the morning light, the Aegean Sea sparkling blue in the distance. And I felt something crack open in my chest, not pain this time, but something else. Something that felt almost like joy. I was here. I'd actually done it. Caroline Winters, 65 years old, too old to travel according to her daughter, was in Athens, Greece. Alone. Free. The tears came then, and I didn't try to stop them. The first thing I did when I landed in Athens was turn off my phone. Not airplane mode. Not silent. Completely off. I held down that power button and watched the screen go dark, and it felt like cutting a rope that had been strangling me for 3 years. I didn't want to know when they discovered what I'd done. I didn't want to hear Claire's voice, tight with anger and confusion, demanding to know why their tickets were cancelled. I didn't want Derek's condescending tone explaining to me, like I was a child who'd broken something expensive, that I'd cost them thousands of dollars and ruined their dream vacation. I wanted silence. I wanted peace. I wanted to exist, just for a few hours, in a world where I didn't owe anyone an explanation for simply living. The Athens airport was chaotic. Beautiful, overwhelming chaos. Signs in Greek and English, people shouting in languages I didn't understand, the smell of coffee and pastries and jet fuel. I stood there with my single suitcase, this 65-year-old woman who hadn't navigated a foreign country in 3 decades, and I felt panic rising in my throat. What had I done? What was I thinking? I didn't speak Greek. I didn't know where I was going. I had a hotel reservation, booked hastily on my phone during the layover in Frankfurt, but had no idea how to get there. I didn't even know how foreign currency worked anymore. I stood there frozen, and I felt that old familiar urge to call Claire. To say, "Honey, I'm lost, I need help, can you tell me what to do?" To default back to the role I'd played for 3 years, the helpless mother who needed her daughter to manage her life. But Claire wasn't there. And more importantly, I didn't want her to be. So I took a breath, a deep, shaky breath that hurt my chest, and I figured it out. I followed the signs to the taxi stand. I showed the driver the hotel address on my phone. I sat in the back of that taxi and watched Athens blur past my window, and I didn't call anyone. I did it myself. The hotel was small, tucked away on a side street in the Plaka neighborhood, not far from the Acropolis. It was nothing fancy, the photos online had promised rustic charm, which I'd learned over the years usually meant old and slightly run down. But when I walked into my room and saw the balcony overlooking the narrow street below, with potted geraniums and morning light streaming through the shutters, something in me softened. This was mine. This little room, with its creaky bed and tiny bathroom and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. Mine. Not a guest room in someone else's house. Not a space I was borrowing out of charity. Mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel it, the exhaustion, the fear, the exhilaration, the grief. All of it at once. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Really cried. Not the silent tears I'd learned to hide in the bathroom at Claire's house, but loud, ugly, body-shaking sobs that hurt my ribs and made my throat raw. I cried for the 3 years I'd spent being invisible. For Robert, who died before we could take the trips we'd promised each other. For the version of Claire who used to think I was worth traveling with. For myself, for all the times I'd swallowed my hurt and smiled and said, "That's okay, honey, you go have fun." I cried until there was nothing left, until I was empty and exhausted and strangely lighter. And then I washed my face, changed my clothes, and went out to see Athens. I had no plan. No itinerary. I just walked. I walked through the narrow streets of Plaka with their tourist shops and tavernas. I walked past ancient ruins that had stood there for thousands of years, long before my problems, long before my pain. I walked until my feet hurt and my legs ached and the sun was high and hot above me. And somewhere during that walk, I realized something that made me stop dead in the middle of the sidewalk. I was happy. Not content. Not okay. Actually happy. The kind of happiness I hadn't felt since before Robert got sick, maybe even before that. A bubbling, effervescent feeling in my chest that made me want to laugh out loud. I was in Athens. I was alone. I was free. And I was happy. That night, I turned on my phone. I had to. I knew I couldn't hide forever, and some part of me, the part that was still a mother, still bound by invisible threads of guilt and obligation, needed to know that they were okay. That they'd gotten home safely. That the world hadn't ended because I'd finally done something for myself. The phone took a moment to connect to the hotel Wi-Fi, and then it started. Message after message after message. 37 texts. 15 missed calls. 4 voicemails. All from Claire. My hands were shaking as I opened the first text. It was timestamped from early that morning, before I'd even landed. "Mom, call me ASAP. Emergency." Then, 10 minutes later, MOM. "Where are you? Call me." Then, I don't know what happened but our tickets were cancelled. All of them. The airline says someone called yesterday and cancelled everything. Did you do something? Did you touch the tickets? Then, Derek is losing his mind. We're trying to rebook but everything is either sold out or triple the price. The kids are crying. This was supposed to be our dream vacation. Then, "Mom, I'm calling you. Pick up." I scrolled through them all, watching the progression from confusion to anger to something that almost looked like concern. The last text had come in just 2 hours ago. "Where are you? I came home to check on you and you're gone. Your stuff is gone. What the hell is happening? Are you okay? I'm calling the police if I don't hear from you in the next hour." The police. She was going to call the police because her 65-year-old mother had the audacity to leave without permission. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt terrible for making her worry. That's what the old Caroline would have felt, immediate, crushing guilt, followed by the urgent need to apologize and make it better and smooth everything over. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt angry. Angry that she'd lived with me for 3 years and never once asked what I wanted, what I needed, what I dreamed about. Angry that she assumed I'd just sit at home like a good little houseplant, waiting for them to come back and need me again. Angry that even now, even after I'd finally done something for myself, her texts were all about her inconvenience, her ruined plans, her stress. Not once, not in 37 texts, did she say, "Mom, are you okay?" Not once did she ask if something was wrong, if I was hurting, if maybe, just maybe, I'd had a reason for what I did. I listened to the voicemails. The first one was pure anger. "Mom, what did you do? Did you cancel our tickets? Did you actually cancel our tickets? Do you have any idea how much money you just cost us? How could you be so selfish?" Selfish. That word hit me like a slap. I'd spent 65 years putting other people first. 65 years sacrificing my wants, my needs, my dreams. I'd raised Claire alone for 5 years after Robert died, working 2 jobs to keep her in a good school district. I'd paid for her college, not all of it, but every penny I could scrape together. I'd moved in with her when she asked, giving up my independence, my home, my life, because she said she wanted me there. And the one time I did something for myself, I was selfish. The second voicemail was different. Her voice was strained, worried. "Mom, please call me back. I don't care about the tickets anymore. I just need to know you're safe. Please. I'm worried about you." The third, "Mom, it's been 6 hours. Where are you? I checked your room and your suitcase is gone and some of your clothes. Did you leave? Where would you even go? Please, just text me. Just let me know you're alive." The fourth, the most recent, "Okay, I'm really scared now. This isn't like you. You don't just leave without telling anyone. I'm going to call the police if I don't hear from you by 8 p.m. I'm sorry if I said something that upset you. I'm sorry about the trip. Just please call me." I sat on the balcony with my phone in my hand, listening to my daughter's voice crack with worry, and I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt something. But it wasn't guilt. It wasn't the urgent need to fix this, to make her feel better, to sacrifice my own peace of mind for hers. I felt tired. Bone deep, soul weary, tired. Tired of being the one who always called back, always smoothed things over, always put everyone else's emotions before my own. Tired of carrying the weight of other people's expectations. Tired of making myself small so everyone else could feel big. I typed out a text. Deleted it. Typed another one. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "I'm fine. I'm safe. I need some time alone. Don't call the police. I'll be in touch when I'm ready." I hit send before I could second guess myself. The response came in less than 30 seconds, "Where are you?" I turned the phone off again. The next morning, I woke up to church bells and sunlight and the sound of someone singing in Greek on the street below. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back, the cancelled tickets, the flight, Athens, Claire's frantic messages, and instead of dread, I felt that same bubbling happiness from yesterday. I was still here. Still free. Still choosing myself. I had breakfast at a small cafe around the corner from my hotel. Greek coffee so strong it made my hands shake, fresh bread with honey and yogurt, orange juice that tasted like it had been squeezed that morning. The owner, a woman maybe in her 70s with silver hair and laugh lines around her eyes, brought everything to my table herself. "American?" she asked in heavily accented English. "Yes. Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "You have the look. Lost but happy. Most Americans, they are lost and angry. You are different." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled. She sat down across from me without asking, which would have seemed rude back home but here felt natural. "First time in Greece?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." She studied me for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling she could see right through me. See all my pain and anger and newfound freedom written across my face. Then she said, "Good. A woman should travel alone at least once. To remember who she is without other people telling her." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Yes. Exactly. How long will you stay?" I don't know. I booked the hotel for a week, but I'm not sure. I don't have a plan." She nodded like this made perfect sense. Plans are overrated. Life is not a schedule. You stay as long as you need. Athens will tell you when it is time to leave. Her name was Eleni. Over the next hour, she told me about her life, how she'd married young, had 4 children, spent decades raising them and running this cafe with her husband. How he'd died 5 years ago and her children had wanted her to sell the cafe and move in with one of them, but she'd refused. "They love me," she said, stirring sugar into her own coffee. "But love can be a cage if you let it." I told them, "I will visit, yes. But this cafe, this is mine. My life is not finished just because I am old." "How old are you?" I asked. 76. "And I still work every day. I still travel when I want. Last year, I went to Japan by myself. My children, they worry. They say, 'Mama, you are too old, what if something happens?' But what if something happens while I am sitting in their living room, waiting to die? At least if I die in Japan, I will die happy." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time and I couldn't remember how long. "You understand," she said, smiling. "I can see it. You have run away." Yes. I suppose I have." "From what?" "Husband?" "My daughter. She made me feel invisible. Like I didn't matter anymore." Eleni's face darkened. "This happens. Children forget that mothers are people. They see only the role, not the woman. My oldest daughter is the same. Everything is about her children, her life, her problems. She calls me only when she needs something. But I love her anyway. We love them anyway. That is the curse of being a mother." I cancelled their vacation tickets, I blurted out. They were going to Europe, Paris, Rome, all the places I've always wanted to see, and they told me I was too old to come with them. So I cancelled their tickets and booked my own ticket here. I expected judgment. Expected her to tell me I'd been cruel, petty, wrong. Instead, she threw her head back and laughed, a rich, deep laugh that made other customers look over. "Oh, you are my hero. That is perfect. They learn nothing if we are always nice, always understanding. Sometimes we must show them we have teeth." Teeth. Yes. That's exactly what it felt like. Like I'd finally bared my teeth after years of keeping my mouth shut. Eleni reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did the right. Now, you enjoy Athens. You eat good food. You see beautiful things. You remember you are not just mother, you are Caroline, yes?" "Yes. Caroline Winters. You are Caroline Winters. And Caroline Winters deserves to see the world." I stayed at that cafe for 3 hours, talking to Eleni about everything and nothing. She told me where to go, what to see, which tourist traps to avoid. She wrote down the names of restaurants on a napkin in her slanted handwriting. She made me promise to come back for dinner that evening. "I cook special for you. Real Greek food, not tourist garbage." When I finally left, she hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Do not go back too soon. They will survive without you. You must learn to survive without them." I spent the next 3 days exploring Athens like a woman possessed. I climbed to the Acropolis and stood among the ruins of the Parthenon, running my hands over stone that had stood there for 2,500 years. I got lost in the ancient agora and didn't care. I sat in Syntagma Square and watched the changing of the guard. I visited museums filled with marble statues and painted pottery and the accumulated weight of centuries of human history. And everywhere I went, I thought about time. About how short life is. About how I'd wasted 3 years, maybe more, being small and quiet and grateful for scraps. I turned on my phone once a day, just for a few minutes. Claire's messages continued, evolving from anger to worry to a strange kind of acceptance. "Fine. If you need space, take space. But you owe me an explanation. The kids are asking where you are. I don't know what to tell them. Derek says I should just let you be. Maybe you need this." I don't understand what this is. I cancelled the rest of our time off work. We can't rebook the trip now anyway. I hope you're happy. That last one stung. Not because I felt guilty, but because of how clearly it showed that she still didn't understand. She thought this was about ruining her vacation. She thought this was some petty revenge scheme cooked up by a bitter old woman. She couldn't see that this was about me finally choosing myself. I didn't respond to any of her messages. I wasn't ready. Wasn't ready to explain, to justify, to defend my decision to exist as more than just her convenient babysitter. On the fourth day, I took a ferry to Santorini. I hadn't planned to. I'd been having coffee with Eleni, this had become my morning routine, and she'd asked what I wanted to do with the rest of my trip. I don't know, I'd said. Maybe just stay here. I like Athens. Athens is beautiful, she agreed. But you did not come all this way to stay in one place. Where else do you want to go? I saw pictures of Santorini. The white buildings, the blue doors, the sunsets. It looked like a postcard. Like something that couldn't be real. So go. The ferry leaves this afternoon. You don't need permission. I didn't bring enough money. I didn't plan for Caroline. She'd said my name firmly, like a teacher correcting a student. Stop finding reasons to say no. You have money. You have time. You have no one waiting for you. So go. She was right. I had my credit card. I had no schedule. I had no one to answer to. So I went. The ferry ride was 6 hours of blue water and sunshine and the smell of salt air. I sat on the deck with the wind whipping my hair, my gray, thinning hair that Claire had once suggested I dye because you'd look so much younger, Mom, and I felt that happiness again. That wild, reckless joy that came from doing something just because I wanted to. Santorini was even more beautiful than the pictures. The white buildings climbing up the cliff face, the blue-domed churches, the narrow winding streets packed with tourists and locals and cats sleeping in the sun. It was touristy and crowded and overpriced and absolutely magical. I'd booked a room in Oia, the famous village where everyone goes to watch the sunset. It was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, but it had a view of the caldera, that massive volcanic crater filled with blue water. I sat on my little balcony that first evening and watched the sun sink into the sea, painting everything gold and pink and orange, and I cried again. But these weren't sad tears. They were grateful tears. Overwhelmed tears. The tears of someone who'd forgotten beauty existed and was suddenly drowning in it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The time difference, the excitement, the strangeness of it all kept me awake. So at midnight, I did something I never would have done as the old Caroline. I left my room and walked down to the beach. The beach in Oia isn't like the beaches back home. It's all black volcanic sand and rocks, not the kind of place you go to sunbathe. But at midnight, with the moon reflecting off the water and the village lights twinkling on the cliff above, it was perfect. I took off my shoes and walked along the shore, letting the water lap at my feet. It was cool but not cold. Everything was quiet except for the gentle sound of waves and the distant music from a bar somewhere up in the village. And standing there, with my feet in the Aegean Sea, on an island in Greece, thousands of miles from the life I'd been living, I finally let myself feel it. All of it. The full weight of my anger. I'd been trying so hard to be reasonable. To understand Claire's perspective. To forgive her carelessness and thoughtlessness. To make excuses, she's busy, she's stressed, she has her own family to worry about. But standing there in the darkness, with no one watching, no one to judge me, I let myself be furious. Furious that she'd taken me for granted. Furious that she'd made me feel like a burden. Furious that she'd looked at me, her mother, who'd given her life, who'd sacrificed everything to give her opportunities one never had, and decided I wasn't worth including in her adventures. Furious that I'd let her. That I'd enabled it. That I'd spent 3 years swallowing my pain and pretending everything was fine because I was too afraid to lose the only family I had left. I screamed. Right there on that empty beach, I screamed into the night. Not words. Just sound. Pure, raw rage that had been building inside me for 3 years, maybe longer. I screamed until my throat hurt and my voice cracked and I had nothing left. And then I sat down in the sand and laughed. Laughed at myself, at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, a 65-year-old woman sitting alone on a beach in Greece in the middle of the night, having just screamed at the ocean like a madwoman. Robert would have loved this. He would have laughed with me, would have sat down in the sand beside me and put his arm around my shoulders and said, "Well, Caroline, this is certainly an adventure." God, I missed him. Missed him so much it physically hurt. But sitting there on that beach, I felt closer to him than I had in years. Because this freedom, this wildness, this refusal to be small, this was the Caroline he'd fallen in love with. The woman I'd been before life and loss and obligation had worn me down. "I'm finding my way back," I whispered to him, to the ghost of him that lived in my heart. "I'm finding my way back to her." I stayed on that beach until dawn, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to navy to pale blue. I watched the sun rise over the sea, painting everything in shades of gold and rose, and I made myself a promise. I would not go back to being invisible. I would not go back to that guest room and that half-life. I would not spend whatever years I had left making myself small so other people could feel big. I didn't know what that meant yet. I didn't know if it meant staying in Greece, or going somewhere else, or eventually returning home. But whatever I decided, it would be my decision. Not Claire's. Not anyone else's. Mine. I spent a week in Santorini. I hiked from Fira to Oia along the caldera edge, a 3-hour walk that left me exhausted and exhilarated. I took a boat tour to the volcanic islands in the middle of the caldera. I ate at local tavernas, learning to say Efaristo for thank you and Paracalo for please. I made friends with other solo travelers, a Japanese woman in her 70s who'd been traveling alone for 5 years, a divorced man from Australia who said I inspired him with my courage. Courage. People kept using that word. And every time they did, I wanted to laugh. Because this didn't feel like courage. It felt like survival. Like I'd finally reached the point where staying was more painful than leaving. But maybe that's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. On my last night in Santorini, I finally called Claire. I'd been putting it off, finding excuses. But I knew I couldn't hide forever. And truthfully, as angry as I was, I did miss my grandchildren. Emma and Jack, who I'd helped raise, who I'd loved with every fiber of my being even when their mother made me feel invisible. I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine. I'd started drinking wine regularly, something I never did at Claire's house, and I pressed her number. She answered on the first ring. Mom. Just that. Just my name. And I could hear everything in it: relief, anger, confusion, hurt. Hi, Claire. Where the hell have you been? I took a sip of wine, watching the lights of Oia twinkle below me. Greece. Silence. Then, Greece. You're in Greece. Yes. You cancelled our tickets to Europe so you could go to Greece. Yes. Another silence, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, could picture her face, the way her jaw would be clenched, the way she'd be gripping her phone too tight. Why? Her voice cracked on the word. Why would you do that? Do you have any idea how much money you cost us? How did you ruin our family vacation? The kids were devastated. Derek is still furious. And you just disappeared. Without a word. Do you know how worried I've been? I felt that old urge rise up, the need to apologize, to make it better, to smooth everything over. But I pushed it down. Claire, do you know why I did it? Because you were mad about not being invited? Because you wanted to punish us? No. I did it because you made me feel like I didn't exist. That's ridiculous. You live with us. You see us every day. I live in your house, I said, my voice steady despite the way my hands were shaking. But I don't live with you. I'm not part of your family. I'm just the help. The live-in babysitter and housekeeper who works for free. Mom, that's not. When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Really asked, not just a polite "how are you" in passing. When was the last time you included me in a family decision? When was the last time you treated me like a person instead of a convenience? Silence. You told me I was too old to travel with you, I continued, and I could hear my voice starting to shake with anger. Do you understand how that felt? To have my own daughter look at me and decide I wasn't worth including in your life anymore? I didn't mean it like that. I just thought, the flights are long, you'd be tired, you'd slow us down. I'm 65, Claire. Not 90. I'm healthy. I'm capable. I'm sitting in Santorini right now after walking 3 hours along a cliff path. I took a ferry by myself. I navigated a foreign country where I don't speak the language. I'm doing just fine without you. Another silence, and when she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I didn't know you were that unhappy. I know. That's the problem. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't notice. I spent 3 years living in your house and you never once stopped to wonder if I was okay. That's not fair. I was busy. I have kids, I have a job, I have a million things to deal with. And I had nothing. No life. No purpose. Nothing except waiting for you to need me. Do you know what that feels like? To have given up everything, my home, my independence, my identity, and realize you're just furniture? Something useful but not important? I heard her breath catch. Mom. I'm not trying to hurt you, I said, softer now. I'm really not. But I need you to understand. I canceled those tickets because I needed you to feel what I'd been feeling for 3 years. I needed you to feel left behind. To feel like you didn't matter. To feel what it's like when people you love forget you exist. I never forgot. Yes, you did. Maybe not completely. But enough. Enough that you could plan a 3-week vacation and not even consider including me. Enough that you could tell me to my face that I was too old, too slow, too much trouble. Enough that when I disappeared, your first reaction was anger about the tickets, not worry about me. She was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I know. That's what made it worse. You didn't mean to. You just did. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a role. As mom. As the woman who's supposed to take care of you and ask for nothing in return. What do you want me to do? She asked, and she sounded so young. Like the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. How do I fix this? I looked out at the view, the white buildings, the blue water, the endless sky. And I realized I didn't have an answer. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if you can fix it. I don't know if I want you to. Right now, I just need space. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not just your mother. Are you coming back? The question hung in the air between us. And I realized I still didn't know the answer. Eventually. I haven't decided when. I'm not ready yet. What about your stuff? What about Claire? I cut her off gently. I don't want to talk about logistics right now. I don't want to talk about stuff or schedules or plans. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. That I'm safe. That I'm doing something I should have done years ago. What's that? Living. Actually living, not just existing. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The kids miss you. Emma keeps asking when Grandma's coming home." The guilt hit me like a wave. The kids. God, I missed them so much it hurt. But I couldn't go back just for them. I couldn't sacrifice myself again, even for them. Tell them I love them. Tell them Grandma needs some time to herself, but I'll see them soon. Tell them. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Tell them that sometimes grown-ups need to remember who they are. Even grandmas. Okay. Her voice was thick with tears. Okay. I'll tell them. Claire? Yeah? I do love you. I hope you know that. This isn't about not loving you. It's about learning to love myself enough to demand better. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I know. I know, Mom. I love you too. I'm sorry I forgot to show it. We hung up shortly after that. There wasn't much else to say. The damage wasn't something that could be fixed in one conversation, and we both knew it. I sat on that balcony for a long time after finishing my wine, watching the stars come out. I felt hollowed out but also strangely peaceful. Like lancing a wound, painful but necessary. The next day, I left Santorini. But I didn't go home. I went to Crete. Then Rhodes. Then back to Athens for a few more days with Eleni, who hugged me and made me promise to write. Then I flew to Rome. The city I'd dreamed about for decades, and spent a week wandering through ancient ruins and eating gelato and throwing coins in the Trevi fountain. I went to Florence and stood in front of David and cried because something that beautiful shouldn't exist. I went to Venice and got lost in the maze of canals and didn't care. I went to Paris and climbed the Eiffel Tower and ate croissants for breakfast and felt Robert's ghost smiling beside me. I did it all alone. I did it all for me. And slowly, day by day, city by city, I felt myself coming back to life. Felt the Caroline who'd gotten buried under years of obligation and sacrifice and quiet suffering started to emerge again. I bought clothes I liked instead of practical things. I ate when I was hungry instead of on someone else's schedule. I stayed up late reading in cafes and slept until noon when I was tired. I talked to strangers and made temporary friends and let myself be vulnerable and real. I learned that I liked walking. That I had opinions about art. That I was braver than I thought. That I could navigate foreign cities and handle problems and take care of myself without anyone's help. I learned that I wasn't too old. I wasn't too slow. I wasn't in too much trouble. I was just Caroline. And Caroline was enough. 2 months after I left, I finally went home. Not to Claire's house. That was never really home, I realized. That was just a place I'd been staying while I forgot how to be myself. I flew back to the States and rented a small apartment in the city where I used to live, before I sold my house. It wasn't much, a 1-bedroom in an older building, with radiators that clanked and neighbors I could hear through the walls. But it was mine. I furnished it slowly, piece by piece, with things I chose. A comfortable reading chair. Bookshelves for all the books I'd accumulated on my trip. Art prints from Paris and Rome and Athens. A blue scarf from Santorini that I hung on the wall because it made me happy to look at. I got a part-time job at a bookstore, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. The money was terrible, but I didn't need much. I had Robert's pension, small but enough. And more importantly, I had something to do, somewhere to be that wasn't just waiting to be needed. I told Claire where I was after I'd been back for a week. She'd been calling regularly since that conversation in Santorini, and our talks had gotten easier. Not perfect, we had years of damage to work through, but better. When I told her I'd gotten my own place, there was a long silence. Then she said, "You're not coming back." "No. I'm not." Another silence. "Can I visit you?" "Yes. Of course." "But Claire, things are different now." "I'm different now. I'm not going to be available whenever you need me. I'm not going to drop everything to babysit. I have my own life now." "I understand." And I thought maybe she did. Maybe my leaving had taught her something too. "Can we come this weekend? The kids really want to see you." They came that Saturday. Emma and Jack burst into my apartment and threw themselves at me, and I held them tight and breathed in the smell of their hair and let myself feel it, the love, the joy, the connection that had nothing to do with obligation. Claire stood in the doorway, looking around at my little apartment with an expression I couldn't quite read. "It's nice," she said finally. "It suits you." "Thank you." We had coffee while the kids explored the apartment. It was small enough that there wasn't much to explore, but they made an adventure of it anyway. And we talked. Really talked. About her feelings and my feelings and all the ways we'd hurt each other without meaning to. "I want to do better," she said. "I want to be better. I don't want you to feel like you have to run away to matter." I didn't run away. I ran toward something. Toward myself. She nodded slowly. "I'm glad you did. You seem, I don't know, different. Happier. More like the mom I remember from when I was little." That made something in my chest crack open. "You remember that version of me?" "Of course I do. You used to laugh all the time. You used to sing while you cooked. You used to tell me stories about all the places you wanted to go someday." She looked down at her coffee cup. "And then Dad got sick, and you got quieter. And then he died, and you just disappeared into yourself. And when you moved in with us, I thought I was helping. I thought I was giving you a place to heal. But I think maybe I was just giving you a place to hide. I'd never thought about it that way." But she was right. After Robert died, I'd been so lost, so broken, that when Claire offered me that guest room, I'd taken it gratefully. I'd hidden in that house, in that role of helpful grandmother, because it meant I didn't have to figure out who Caroline Winters was without Robert Winters beside her. "You were helping," I said. "At first. I needed that. I needed to not be alone in that empty house. But then I got stuck. And you got comfortable with me being stuck. We both did. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I let you." We looked at each other across my small kitchen table, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Can we start over?" she asked. "Not forget everything that happened, but just try again? Try to have a relationship where you're not just my mother, but a person? Where do I actually see you?" "I'd like that." She smiled, wobbly and uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why Athens? Why Greece, of all places?" I thought about it. About that moment on the phone when the word had just come out of my mouth, surprising even me. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It wasn't planned. It wasn't one of the places your father and I talked about. I think I needed to go somewhere that was just mine. Somewhere that didn't have his ghost or your expectations or anyone else's dreams attached to it. I needed to go somewhere and discover it for myself." "And did you? Discover yourself?" I smiled. "I'm getting there. That was 8 months ago. Claire and I have dinner once a week now. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at hers, sometimes at a restaurant halfway between. The kids come to my apartment every other weekend and we do things, go to museums, walk in the park, bake cookies in my tiny kitchen. I'm teaching Emma to knit. Jack wants me to teach him to speak Greek, so I'm learning along with him from YouTube videos. Derek apologized to me, eventually. It took him a while. He was angrier about the money than Claire was, more offended by what he saw as a betrayal. But one evening when he came to pick up the kids, he lingered in the doorway and said, "I'm sorry we made you feel unwelcome." That wasn't right. It wasn't a perfect apology. But it was something. I still work at the bookstore 3 days a week. The owner, a woman named Rita in her 50s, has become a friend. We go to book clubs together, occasionally catch a movie. She's the first real friend I've made in years, someone who knows me as Caroline, not as someone's mother or wife or grandmother. I started taking Greek lessons at the community center. I'm terrible at it, the grammar makes my head spin, but I love it anyway. The teacher is a young man from Thessaloniki who laughs at my pronunciation but says I have determination. I'm planning another trip. Maybe to Japan this time, inspired by Eleni's stories. Maybe to South America. Maybe back to Greece. I miss it, miss the light and the sea and the way I felt when I was there. I haven't decided yet. But knowing I can go, knowing I have the freedom and the courage and the right to choose, that's everything. I talk to Eleni once a month. She wants me to come back to Athens, and says she has someone she wants me to meet, a nice man, a widower, very handsome. I laugh and tell her I'm not looking for romance. I'm still in love with Robert, probably always will be. But maybe someday. Maybe when I'm more fully myself, more complete, maybe then I'll be ready to let someone else in. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll just keep traveling alone, keep discovering myself in new cities and new experiences. Maybe that's enough. I think about that night in Santorini sometimes. That moment on the beach when I screamed into the darkness and felt all my rage and pain pour out of me. That was the moment everything changed. Not when I canceled the tickets. Not when I boarded the plane. But when I finally let myself feel the full weight of my anger and didn't try to push it down or make it smaller or apologize for it. Women my age were taught to be nice. To be understanding. To swallow our hurt and smile and make everyone else comfortable. We're taught that expressing anger is unbecoming, that demanding more is selfish, that putting ourselves first is somehow a moral failure. But that anger saved me. It woke me up. It gave me the strength to choose myself when everything in my conditioning told me to choose everyone else. I'm not sorry I canceled those tickets. I'm not sorry I left. I'm not sorry I made Claire feel a fraction of the pain I'd been carrying for 3 years. Because if I hadn't done it, if I'd just stayed in that guest room, swallowed my hurt one more time, smiled and said, "That's okay, honey, you go have fun," I would have died there. Maybe not physically, not right away. But everything that made me Caroline, everything that made me more than just a role, more than just a function, that would have died. And I would have spent the rest of my life as a ghost. Present but not really there. Seen but not visible. Existing but not living. Last week, I went back to Claire's house for the first time since I'd left. Emma had a school play, she was playing Alice in Wonderland, and she'd asked me to come. Not just asked. Begged. Called me herself instead of having Claire do it. "Please, Grandma. Please. I want you there." How could I say no to that? I drove there instead of having Claire pick me up. I wanted my own transportation, my own escape route. Old habits die hard, I suppose. The house looked the same from the outside. But walking through that door felt surreal. Like stepping into a past life, a version of myself I'd shed like old skin. Claire had cleaned out the guest room. She showed me, she seemed nervous, like she was waiting for my reaction. The exercise equipment was gone. The Christmas decorations were gone. She'd painted the walls a soft blue and put in a real bed, a nice one, with a quilted bedspread and actual pillows. I thought, she said hesitantly, if you ever wanted to stay over. When you visit. It would be your room. Not a guest room. Not a storage space. Yours. I felt tears prick my eyes. It was such a small thing, really. But it meant she was trying. It meant she understood, at least a little bit, what she'd taken from me. Thank you, I said. We drove to the school together, all of us crammed into Claire's SUV, the kids excited and chattering, Derek making awkward conversation about work. It felt almost normal. Almost like a family. But it's different now. Better. Because I wasn't there out of obligation or lack of options. I was there because I chose to be. Emma was wonderful in the play. She forgot her lines once and I mouthed them from the audience, just like I used to do for Claire, and my heart felt so full I thought it might burst. When it was over, she ran to me first, not to Claire, to me, and threw her arms around my waist. Did you see me, Grandma? Did you see me? I saw you, sweetheart. You were perfect. At dinner afterward, a noisy restaurant with mediocre pasta and too loud music, Jack climbed into my lap and said, Grandma, are you going to move back in with us? The table went quiet. Everyone looked at me. I smoothed his hair back from his forehead, this beautiful boy I loved so much. No, honey. I have my own apartment now. But don't you miss us? Every day. But missing someone doesn't mean you have to live with them. It just means you love them. Can I come visit you more? Anytime you want. He seemed satisfied with that. The conversation moved on. But I caught Claire's eye across the table, and she mouthed thank you. I don't know what she was thanking me for. For coming to the play. For being honest with Jack. For giving her another chance. Maybe all of it. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I regret canceling those tickets, leaving the way I did, causing all that pain and chaos and disruption. The answer is no. Not even a little bit. Because that decision, that moment of choosing myself over everyone else's comfort, it didn't just save my life. It gave me one. I'm 66 now. If I'm lucky, I might have 20 more years. Maybe 30. And I refuse to spend them being invisible. Being convenient. Being whatever shape other people need me to be so they can feel good about themselves. I am Caroline Winters. I am a widow, a mother, a grandmother. But I'm also a woman who loves Greek coffee and Italian gelato. Who can navigate foreign cities alone. Who isn't afraid to scream at the ocean when she's angry. Who books plane tickets on a whim and makes friends with cafe owners and learns languages badly but enthusiastically. I'm a woman who takes up space. Who has opinions and wants and dreams. Who isn't done yet. Who will never be done, not until the day I die. They said I was too old to travel. But the truth is, I was just too quiet for too long. And that morning, when I canceled their tickets and booked my own, I didn't just cancel a vacation. I canceled the version of me that waited for permission to live. The version that made herself small so everyone else could feel big. The version that believed being a good mother meant erasing yourself completely. I canceled that woman. And in her place, I found myself. Some people might call what I did selfish. Cruel, even. Running away. Abandoning my family. Prioritizing my own desires over my responsibilities. Let them. Let them say whatever they want. Because I know the truth. I know what it took to get on that plane. I know what it costs to choose myself. I know how close I came to spending the rest of my life as furniture in someone else's house, waiting to die. And I know that walking away wasn't abandonment. It was survival. It was the bravest thing I've ever done. I keep that postcard I wrote in the Frankfurt airport. The one I never mailed to Claire. It sits on my refrigerator now, held up by a magnet from Athens, a little blue and white windmill. Sometimes I read it and remember who I was that day. Hurt and angry and terrified and exhilarated all at once. Taking a leap into the unknown with no idea if I'd land safely or crash. I landed. Not perfectly. Not without scrapes and bruises. But I landed. And now I'm standing. On my own 2 feet. In my own life. Taking up space I don't have to apologize for. Last month, a woman came into the bookstore. She was around my age, maybe a bit younger. She was looking for travel guides, and we got to talking. She told me her story. Her husband had died 2 years ago, her kids wanted her to move in with them, she was lonely but also afraid of losing her independence. I recognized her immediately. Saw myself in her uncertain eyes. So I told her my story. Not all of it, we didn't have time for all of it, but enough. About the guest room and the cancelled tickets in Athens. When I finished, she was crying. I'd been so scared, she whispered. Scared to say no to my kids. Scared to be alone. Scared that if I choose myself, I'll lose them. I reached across the counter and took her hand. You might, I said honestly. You might lose them for a while. They might be angry. They might not understand. But you know what's worse than that? What? Losing yourself. Disappearing into their lives until you forget you ever had your own. That's worse. That's the thing you don't come back from. She bought a travel guide to Portugal. Came back a week later to tell me she'd booked a ticket. Came back a month after that to show me photos and tell me stories and thank me for giving her courage. I told her the same thing I'm telling you now, you don't need courage. You just need to reach the point where staying hurts more than leaving. You just need to remember that you're not just someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's anything. You're a person. A whole, complete, valuable person who deserves to take up space and chase dreams and demand more from the people who claim to love you. You just need to remember that it's never too late. Never too old. Never too selfish. It's never wrong to choose yourself. Tomorrow, I'm flying back to Athens. Eleni's birthday is next week, she's turning 77, and she's throwing a party. You must come, she insisted on the phone. You are family now. Family. Real family. The kind that sees you and celebrates you and wants you there because of who you are, not what you can do for them. Claire knows I'm going. The kids made me a birthday card to give to Eleni, they've adopted her as an honorary grandmother through my stories. Derek is still a bit stiff around me, but he's trying. And Claire. Claire sent me a text yesterday, have fun in Greece, Mom. Take lots of pictures. And maybe I could come visit you there someday? If you want company. If not, that's okay too. But I'd like to see it. See what you found there. I stared at that text for a long time before responding. Finally, I wrote back, I'd love that. When you come, I'll take you to Eleni's cafe. And to that beach in Santorini. And I'll show you who your mother is when she's just Caroline. I think you'd like her. She sent back a heart emoji. Just that. But it was enough. Because healing isn't instant. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. Relationships don't mend overnight just because everyone apologizes and promises to do better. But we're trying. Both of us. Meeting each other halfway. Learning to see each other as full, complicated people instead of just the roles we play in each other's lives. It's messy and imperfect and sometimes we still hurt each other. But it's real. It's honest. And it's built on a foundation of me knowing, really knowing, in my bones, that I can walk away again if I need to. That's the difference. That's what makes it work. I'm not there out of fear or obligation or lack of options. I'm there because I choose to be. And the moment I don't choose it anymore, I can leave. I can book a ticket, pack a suitcase, and fly away. That freedom, knowing I have it, knowing I've used it, knowing I'll use it again if I have to, that's what makes staying possible. So here I am. 66 years old. Living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. Working part-time at a bookstore. Planning trips and taking Greek lessons and learning who Caroline Winters is when she's not defined by her relationships to other people. Here I am. Happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not content. Not okay. Not making the best of things. Happy. Here I am. Living proof that it's never too late to start over. Never too old to chase dreams. Never too selfish to choose yourself. They said I was too old to travel. They were wrong. I wasn't too old. I was just too quiet. Too accepting. Too willing to believe that my story was already over, that the best parts of my life were behind me, that all I had left was to sit in that guest room and wait to die. But that morning, that beautiful, terrible morning when I stood in the driveway holding their tickets, I realized something that changed everything. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time I was writing it myself. This time I was the main character in my own life. This time I was flying. If you're watching this and you see yourself in Caroline, if you've been making yourself small, swallowing your hurt, waiting for permission to live, please hear this. You deserve more. You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to take up space without apology. You deserve to have dreams and chase them. You deserve to be angry when people treat you poorly, even if those people are family. You deserve to choose yourself, even if it disappoints others. You deserve to live, not just exist. And it's never, ever too late to start. Cancel the tickets. Book the flight. Choose yourself. Your story isn't over yet. In fact, it might just be beginning.